Thus spoke Saint Elia of the knife. The Reverend Mother must combine the seductive wiles of a courtesan with the untouchable majesty of a virgin goddess, holding these attributes in tension so long as the powers of her youth endure. For when youth and beauty have gone, she will find that the place between, once occupied by tension, has become a wellspring of cunning and resourcefulness. From Muad'Dib, a Family Commentaries, by the Princess Irulan. Picking up reading Dune by Frank Herbert. Still in the first book, Dune. Well, Jessica, what do you have to say for yourself? Asked the Reverend Mother. It was near sunset at Castle Caladan and the day of Paul's ordeal. The two women were alone in Jessica's morning room while Paul waited in the adjoining soundproofed meditation chamber. Jessica stood facing the south windows. She saw and yet did not see the evening's banked colors across the meadow and river. She heard, yet she did not hear the Reverend Mother's question. There had been another ordeal once, so many years ago. A skinny girl with hair the color of bronze, her body tortured by the winds of puberty, had entered the study of the Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mohayim, Proctor Superior of the Bene Gesserit School on Wallach 9. Jessica looked down at her right hand and flexed the fingers, remembering the pain, the terror, the anger. Poor Paul, she whispered. I asked you a question, Jessica. The old woman's voice was snappish and demanding. Wait. Oh. Jessica tore her attention away from the past, faced the Reverend Mother, who sat with back to the stone wall between the two west windows. What did you want me to say? What do I want you to say? What do I want you to say? The old voice carried a tone of cruel mimicry. So I had a son, Jessica flared, and she knew she was being goaded into this anger deliberately. You were told to only bear daughters to the Atreides. It meant so much to him, Jessica pleaded. And you thought in your pride that you could produce the Kwisatz Haderach. Jessica lifted her chin. I sensed the possibility. You thought only of your Duke's desire for a son, the old woman snapped. And his desires don't figure in this. An Atreides' daughter could have wed Harkonnen and sealed the breach. You've hopelessly complicated matters. We may lose both bloodlines now. You're not infallible, Jessica said. She braved the steady stare from the old eyes. Presently, the old woman muttered, What's done is done. I vowed I would never regret my decision, Jessica said. How noble, the Reverend Mother sneered. No regrets. We shall see when you're a fugitive with a price on your head and every man's hand turned against you to seek your life and the life of your son. Jessica paled. Is there no alternative? Alternative? A Bene Gesserit should ask that. I only ask what you see in the future with your superior abilities. I see in the future what I've seen in the past. You well know the pattern of our affairs, Jessica. The race knows its own mortality and fears stagnation of its heredity. It's in the bloodstream, the urge to mingle genetic strains without plan. The Imperium, the Choam Company, all the great houses, they are but bits of a phantasm in the path of the flood. Choam, Jessica muttered. I suppose it's already decided how they'll redivide the spoils after Arrakis. What is Choam but the weather vane of our times? The old woman said. The Emperor and his friend now command 59.65% of the Choam dictatorship's votes. Certainly they smell profits, and likely as others smell those same profits, his voting strength will increase. This is the pattern of history, girl. That's certainly what I need right now, Jessica said. A review of history. Don't be facetious, girl. You know as well as I do what forces surround us. We've a 3-point civilization. The imperial household balanced against the federated great houses of the Landsrat, and between them the guild with its damnable monopoly on interstellar transport. In politics, the tripod is the most unstable of all structures. It'd be bad enough without the complication of a feudal trade culture which turns its back on most science. Jessica spoke bitterly. Chips in the path of the flood. And this chip here, this is the Duke Leto. And this one's his son. And this one's... Oh, shut up, girl. You entered this with full knowledge of the delicate edge you walked. I am Bene Gesserit. I exist only to serve, Jessica quoted. Truth, the old woman said, and we can all hope, for now, is to prevent this from erupting into general conflagration, to salvage what we can of the key bloodlines. Jessica closed her eyes, feeling tears pooling beneath the lids. She fought down inner trembling, the outer trembling, the uneven breathing, the ragged pulse, the sweating of the palms. Presently she said, I'll pay for my own mistake. And your son will pay with you. I'll shield him as well as I am able. Shield, the old woman snapped. You well know the weakness there. Shield your son too much, Jessica, and he'll not grow strong enough to fulfill any destiny. Jessica turned away, looked out the window at the gathering darkness. Is it really that terrible? This planet of Arrakis? Bad enough, but not all bad. The Missionaria Protectiva has been in there and softened it up somewhat. The Reverend Mother heaved herself to her feet and straightened a fold in her gown. Call the boy here. I must be leaving soon. Must you? The old woman's voice softened. Jessica, girl, I wish I could stand in your place and take your sufferings. But each of us must take her own path. I know. You're as dear to me as any of my own daughters. But I cannot let that interfere with duty. I understand the necessity. What you did, Jessica, and why you did it, we both know. But kindness forces me to tell you there is little chance your lad will be the Bene Gesserit totality. You mustn't let yourself hope too much. Jessica shook tears from the corners of her eyes. It was an angry gesture. You make me feel like a little girl again, reciting my first lesson. She forced the words out. Humans must never submit to animals. A dry sob shook her. In a low voice, she said, I've been so lonely. It should have been one of the tests, the old woman said. Humans are almost always lonely. Now, summon the boy. He's had a long, frightening day, but he's had time to think and remember. And I must ask the other questions about these dreams of his. Hey friends, it's me, the Ebony Otaku, the well-rounded nerd. We're back in Dune today, and as we keep going and we establish our characters, I'm eventually just going to start reading straight through without any commentary, but right now we're establishing who everyone is. So we open with a conversation between Jessica, the Bene Gesserits, who was given to Leto Atreides as a concubine. She was given strict orders by her house, who has the ability of genetic manipulation, to only bear him daughters. That's intentional. The Bene Gesserit are doing the work of selective breeding, using their women to achieve certain ends for the galaxy than the way that they see fit. That's a theme in these books. House Atreides are one of the royal houses that has the ability to rule over the most valuable planet in the Empire, Arrakis, Dune, the planet where the spice is mined. The spice is the reason there is foresight. The spice allows for interstellar travel. The spice is the most valuable commodity. The other house, the Harkonnens, we met them last time. The Harkonnens are currently in charge of planet Arrakis, and they must give it up to the Atreides because no one house can be in permanent control. Otherwise, things would go all tipsy. But then there's the Empire itself, and we have not met them directly yet. The way that Frank Herbert writes Dune is a series of conversations. You learn the most about the world, the characters in it, what's going on through conversation. There are some authors out there that are very good at balancing conversation with atmosphere. I would point to someone like Tolkien, but Tolkien very heavily leans toward the atmospheric side. You will have paragraph after paragraph, page after page with Tolkien of him just describing what you see. But he does have equally rich conversation, but it's far less than someone like Herbert, who, to set the atmosphere, relies on interactions between the characters to let you know what is happening. So rather than chapters, you basically have a series of scenes where characters are directly interacting with each other. And this first few parts of Dune, because there's not chapters in here, it's parts. These first few parts are introducing you to your key players. We now know Jessica and her plight. And on this week of Valentine's, what better story than the plight of a woman who had the nerve to fall in love and grant a wish for her husband? The Bene Gesserit plant their women in these royal houses and give them orders on what child they are to bear, whether it's male or female, and not just what child to bear, but when to have them. They are long-lived. They are actually highly sought after, prized women for royalty because they're beautiful. I mean, you're not going to marry royalty if you're not pretty. They're well educated, and they are trained to control themselves and their emotions, and they have other interesting powers depending on how they were trained. They understand the intricacies of royal life, and they're dutiful. They're raised to do what they're told. Whether you show up to be an actual wife or you are one of the women in the stable, they're going to do what they're asked to do. But Jessica says it back to her mother superior. I loved him. I was created to serve. You put me in this place for me to serve the Duke. And I fell in love with him. And what he wanted was a son. And if I'm going to be of service and serve, then I had to have a son. And that is the unknown quantity throughout all of science fiction. No matter how masterful a plan might be, nothing gets in the way of a well-laid plan like love. The human condition. Nothing will make the whole world go topsy-turvy, higgledy-piggledy, like somebody having the nerve to fall in love with someone else. The greatest stories of all time have been centered around love, even if it seems silly in the moment. You think back to Romeo and Juliet. I've actually read every single Shakespeare play. I used to perform a lot of Shakespeare in high school and college. It was a specialty of mine once upon a time. But Romeo and Juliet's interesting because it takes place over like a day. It's a very short time frame. Like these kids meet at a party, fall in love, know their families aren't going to be for it, and take themselves out in like 14 hours. It's dumb. Love, or at least what you think is love. But what's interesting about a Romeo and Juliet is from their perspective, that probably was true love. Because you have to remember, children born into royal houses are cloistered. They're kept behind the gates, behind the walls. That's probably the first non-family boy Juliet has seen in a long time. Because back in the day, royal women just were not exposed to the public very much because virginity. But the boys, on the other hand, that's not what we're here to talk about. And the boys are supposed to be off learning how to war, So for those youngsters, maybe in that moment that was love, and it completely destroyed the ideals and plans of their families. Their families lost their next generation on both sides because of an old feud in a moment. Love. It's what love does. Love causes people to sacrifice where they never would have sacrificed. Ideally, love is the reason children even exist. We should be able to look at our children as a product of two people choosing to join together and create life. That's ideally. I understand that's not always the case, but that's not what we're talking about today. And Paul Atreides, he represents the love that Jessica has for the Duke. Interestingly enough, right now, it doesn't say that the Duke loves her that way. And that's why I keep repeating that she's a concubine. She's not his only woman wife. And when we get into the story of Leto II, when we get further into Paul's story, you're going to find out that the mother of Leto II is also a concubine to Paul. It's not the first wife. And that's what I find so interesting when I go back and read stories, especially from old China, where the emperors, the rulers, ruling class merchants, people with money would have multiple spouses, because the purpose wasn't love. The purpose was to produce as many heirs as possible. That is usually the purpose of plural marriage. Whatever version it is, it's love is not part of the equation, and when love shows up, it messes everything up. When you read a lot of the stories about the Chinese dynasties, things are usually going along pretty good until somebody falls in love. And then it all goes left. If you just go in there, do what you're supposed to do, live in your palace, be a cute little bird in a cage, have a son or two, or daughter, or whatever, it'll be cool. Then somebody catches feelings. The emperor's not supposed to have a favorite. The emperor is supposed to treat all of the women in his stables equally, because he is the son of heaven. The son of heaven cannot be tied down by one female. The son of heaven is too good for that. The son of heaven is supposed to, as much as he can, and produce as many heirs as he can. And the reason he's brought so many fine women is to increase the chances of producing a fine personality. But where the Bene Gesserit are so much different than when we look at, real examples of the, harem system, is the Bene Gesserit themselves are genetically bred to be the best. They are put through tests and trials that show that they are the best to produce sons and daughters. In the real world, until we had the benefit of genetics, even if, she looked real good and she played that guitar real well and she sang real good, you don't know if her family Delulu. You don't know what genetics are hiding back there that you're unaware of. But that's where the Bene Gesserit have taken it to another step, and they are directly working with the imperial families to produce the one, the Quetzalcoatl Haderach. The sacrificial Jesus lion. That's, the center point of most stories. And not only did Jessica fuck up the thing because of love, sorry, I couldn't help myself. Not only did she screw things up by producing a male heir, she had the nerve to believe that her child could be the one that for thousands of years the Bene Gesserit have been waiting for, that their selective breeding to produce a male that could transmute the water of life, that turns an ordinary girl from being an ordinary girl into a reverend mother. Is she going pretty? Oh, no, he does. But the lesson is that the best laid plans of mice and men. It's a lesson in seeing how no matter how meticulously you might plan something, there's always a variable that's unknown. And when we become so married to the ideal and the plan that there's no room for flexibility or movement, typically the thing that we're trying to prevent from happening, we accidentally end up causing it to take place. The Bene Gesserit have worked so hard to manipulate the genetics over thousands of years that they are going to produce the demise of the very system that they hold dear. Because the son of Paul Atreides is the one that they should actually be afraid of. So, we're going to pick up with the next conversation in the next Dune video. Paul's going to be brought back in the room to talk to the Reverend Mother. Once we get to a few more characters, and we're nice and established in our lore and what's going on, we're just going to do some straight through readings. We're just going to read and keep reading 30 to 40 minutes at a time. Folks seem to be enjoying going through Dune. I'm enjoying rereading it. I haven't picked these up in a long time. time. Such a long time, I lost my original copies. I have a brand new set, which is great because notice they're kind of thin compared to other books. But what that really does is the way they have the words spaced in the books actually makes it very easy to read aloud. So I'm grateful for that. It makes it a little bit easier when you're trying to do something like this for public consumption. So I hope you enjoyed that interesting Valentine's Day special there. Hey, it was about love, so it counted. All right. So, as always, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.